So just as before we get into this, tell us if you had a few more shekels, what would you be doing with them?
Well, I think that, we're in the middle of a campaign, full disclosure. I've given this more than a little bit of thought. We're raising money off of the strategic plan that we passed last April and that we published in September for the purpose of building capacity in our organization between now and 2025 and investing in innovation in the same way that we did in the first decade, in the second decade. So I've given some thought to this. I try to tell everybody at the Texas Tribune that the fund is not simply going to result in a whole bunch of people being hired. This is not a WPA for journalism that we're doing here. But I do think it causes you in campaign mode to be intentional about the ways in which those dollars can be leveraged most effectively, and then you reverse engineer from that to the pitch you're going to make. I think that if I had a few more shekels, what I would probably do is invest heavily in the means of telling stories and reaching more people. Because at the end of the day, it is all about the success you have as a news organization in reaching as many people as possible. There are 28.3 million people in the state of Texas. We're going to go to 54 million by 2050. The population of Texas is going to double. It is exceedingly more urban today than it was yesterday, and will be exceedingly more urban tomorrow than it is today. We have 6 of the 20 largest cities in the country, more than any other state. And demographic inevitability is upon us in Texas. The state's population is now 43% Anglo, 40% Hispanic. And by 2040, we'll be 55% Hispanic, 32% Anglo. By 2040, less than 1/3 of the Texas population will be Anglo. We have a lot of work to do in reaching high school and college students. We have a lot of work to do in reaching the increasingly large and increasingly influential population of urban and suburban women in Texas. And we have absolutely a huge amount of work to do in reaching dual language Texans in the fastest growing population segments of the state. We need more Spanish language reporters and editors. We need more partnerships with Spanish language media. We need to test and learn and experiment with Spanish language social media. We've got to figure out, and there has to be a fund to the side of operations, if I had those shekels, that would allow us to fail a lot in experimenting with many of the right strategies and tactics to accomplish the audience development goals that we have.
Which is just utterly beyond the conception of
most operating budgets.
5% of the nonprofit news organization.
Risk aversion is the thing that is killing all of us in the media business. We have got to have the latitude to take chances and fail in service to greatness. And that is something that at most places the revenue does not exist that enables folks to do. And so if I had extra money that I don't already have, alongside on a parallel track with operations, I would be spending a bunch of money on A/B testing, testing and learning, experimentation, on revenue generation, on audience development, on member conversion. We have, I think, the absolute best audience person in the whole world, Amanda Zamora, who cut her teeth with Steiger and Toffel at ProPublica. We brought her back home to Texas. You couldn't keep her. They always come back, Paul. We got her back to Texas, and she is the LeBron James of audience. She is the absolute greatest of all time. And I'll tell you, she has a whole list of things that she would like to do in the realm of audience development and membership conversion if I can just find more shekels.
So risk aversion is killing us. I'll be leading that panel at 3 o'clock today.
It does sound like a panel.
My name's Tom Rosenstiel. I've been at this a long time and thought a lot about news values. I just want to sort of play reporter here. Less than 1/3 of Republicans trust journalists, and the group that is the second most skeptical about journalists in the country are millennials. So when you think strategically about going to people and saying, give us money, we're going to be journalists in your community, really, how do you fight this extremely pervasive and profoundly troubling issue how are you going to persuade them that this new organization is not actually a political organization in the current environment? And how do you prove that in your product?
That's
the question.
Yeah, I mean, that's a book, right? But I'll take a couple of stabs at it. First of all, when we named this thing that is the American Journalism Project, we thought about just that problem and named it very intentionally like we named it, because what we know for sure is that selling journalism for journalism's sake doesn't work. And I tell this story all the time. We refer to the community building. I was watching Evan do his thing in front of a bunch of people, a room like this, where he sort of levitates and disappears into a cloud of smoke, and everybody goes, God, that was great. What the hell did he just say? And what I realized was this is the best community builder I've ever seen. And so I think what we've got to convince people of is that this is an organization that does have your back, right? That we talk about trust a lot, and what we don't talk about is that there's no trust without reciprocity, right? And so I think there was a time in which we really felt like local news organizations had our back and they were doing something for us. That disappears, and the media, journalism, becomes this sort of vague, malign, elite abstraction that is as likely to be doing something to us as for us. We just think we've got to reverse that by saying, yeah, this organization does have your back and it's going to make your community better.
And the answer, Tom, is we say to millennials and to the large percentage of people in the population, not just Republicans, who distrust the media, is our job is to give you the tools to be more thoughtful and productive citizens. We talk a lot about citizenship at the Texas Tribune, that we want to give you all who have been so checked out for so long. We, until the last election cycle, had over the previous 4 net, the worst voter turnout in the entire country. The stakes were so high in all those elections, the issue sets were so important to the people who were affected every single day by the work done by our legislature and people in elective office, and yet people had decided, I don't need to vote, I don't need to participate civically. So we talked a lot in the early days and talk still about motivating thoughtful and productive citizenship. The key is not to wear the uniform of either team politically. I talk about nonpartisanship every place I go, the importance. I mean, there are partisan news organizations or organizations with a point of view ideologically peace. You do you. Our job is not to do that. We wear the uniform of no team except for Texas.
Well,
I think that's critical, because if people understand that you are serious about not having your thumb on the scale, you at least get into the conversation with them whether you can successfully prosecute.
I'm going to give you a chance to slap me around, because I want to follow that up. Because you, as a magazine editor, were the absolute best at eviscerating scandalous politicians or those who had an extreme agenda. Yet when I read nonprofit websites, those, because you don't want to go one way or the other, you play it down the middle, therefore the voice is sucked out.
Let me push back really hard on this.
Here we go.
Can I curse Hamburg on public television? Nonpartisan is not non-thinking. When bullshit needs to be called, we call bullshit. We call it enthusiastically, robustly, and with as much volume and pitch as we possibly can. And I will give you the very best example in the modern era that I can think of, and that is when the state of Texas came out a month ago with a press release out of the Secretary of State's office alleging that there were 98,000 non-citizens on the voter rolls and that 54,000 had voted at some point in the previous 28 years in an election at some point over those years. We immediately dismantled the claims of the state government as it related to non-citizens on the voter rolls. We did it with traditional investigative journalism. We did it with a social media distribution strategy that made sure that every single person in the state of Texas understood that this claim, amplified unfortunately by some of our lazy friends in the media who simply reprinted the press release out of the Secretary of State's office, gave the impression that there were all these non-citizens running around. It was a political argument, not an argument about election integrity. And we used our nonpartisan platform to call bullshit when bullshit needed to be called. The truth matters. And so I don't think being nonpartisan necessarily is out of sync with calling bullshit.
I just want to give John Thornton the opportunity to have my back on that question.
I think you're on an issue that's really, really important, which is, I mean, these organizations, they walk around on pins and needles for a reason, which is they're really, really economically insecure. And I do think that a lot of these organizations could have more voice. They could serve a less constant stream of broccoli. That doesn't mean headline has to say, dear Secretary of State, you suck, but there can be more voice, and I think there again, not to bring everything back to money, but give this ecosystem a little breathing room, you're going to find some voice.
Right, but you would also agree, it all gets down to the independence of your journalism and the integrity of your journalism
Absolutely.
and the degree to which you use your mission on behalf of the people you serve. I can always get more money. I can't get more independence or more integrity. And so while I think money matters, at the end of the day, the thing that cannot be purchased elsewhere is the work that we do on behalf of the people we serve. And so I'd rather give somebody's money back to them if it's going to get in between me and the truth telling that we're talking about. I hear you.
But my panel on voice is at 4 o'clock after mine.
After your panel on risk aversion, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Pavelko. I'm proud to represent an organization which is in some sense an offspring, an adaptation of the Trib in Pennsylvania. It's called PA Post. We're only 5 months in, so our runway is still very short, but we're building the runway. My question has to do with revenue from small donors. And believe me, I took your advice about major political donors, and I have red R's and blue D's on my major donor list. Yeah. But one of the challenges, I think, for all of us is to supplement donors of 10,000, 30,000 a year with smaller donors. And I'm wondering, how is the Trib doing in that regard, and what advice do you have to build that broader foundation that is part of sustainability?
We're not doing nearly as well as the numbers in the state population or in the individual communities we serve would suggest we should be doing. I think we're doing significantly better than we've done in the past. We have increased our membership by some very high percentage in the last 12 months, and our member revenue, while significant, is not nearly the largest revenue line in our annual distribution of revenue. I think, it goes, institutional philanthropy is the largest supporter at about 22 or 23%, corporate underwriting at about 20%, events at about 20%, major individual giving is maybe about 16 or 17%, membership is more like 10%. I mean, the fact is, we don't do nearly enough. I remember John telling me.
I mean, that is the one thing that attributes. That's low.
That's low. I mean, we have more opportunity, and honestly, we have spent more.
Partly because Terry's really good at what she does.
Right. Well, honestly, it's because we have focused our energy over the first 10 years in some of those other areas, and something necessarily, no matter how large your organization it is going to get less attention.
Well, and can I put in a plug? I mean, I'll take. Because I remember this very clearly. When we did the initial business plan, we made membership assumptions that had us getting somewhere close to public radio in terms of the formula. Right. Well, guess what? I mean, nobody gets close to public radio.
Right.
What I will say, though, and I think was responsible in large measure for putting the Tribune's foot in the bucket, because what I said to the team was, this membership stuff is just hard. It's too expensive. There's too much churn. Screw it. Let's go chase hell with it. But today there is a lot more science. There's the News Revenue Hub, which is a night granny. There are a lot more tools where we were kind of making it up. I mean, there's a lot more sort of tools and processes and best practices in membership than there were 10 years ago.
Although our audience is significantly up at a time when a lot of other people's audience is down. Our audience was up nearly 40% last year, year over year. At a time when our audience is up, we actually, when asked about the metrics for success at the Tribune, don't talk so much about audience. We talk about loyalty by way of member conversion. Membership is the new audience as far as our metrics go. And so the fact that our membership has grown as much as it has over the last year, and that we have now recurring members who are just desperate to give us money multiple times a year, not just at the time that they're up for renewal, but at other key moments when they want to step up, giving days and crowdsourcing and other things. To us, that is an opportunity. Blue skies ahead as far as membership growth goes. And again, given the population growth of the state.
I'm asking Siri to set a timer for 5 minutes so we can get into questions.
7 minutes? Okay.
Thank you. This panel could go for a lot longer than that, that's for sure. It's been great. I represent, I'm John Davidow. I'm from WBUR in Boston, one of the public radio stations that you've sort of alluded to, and I'm trying to sort of figure out where public radio fits into this ecosystem or not. We obviously, sounds like we tick all the boxes off in terms of your criteria, and we have expertise to share with other nonprofit organizations, and I'm wondering how it fits in with what you guys are doing. And as a bonus question, I'll ask, what's your special sauce when we're talking about a franchise?
Well, public radio, we need to figure out is the short answer. Elizabeth and I have had this conversation. Yes, but I mean, Elizabeth and I have had this conversation. It's just like there is almost everything to learn from public radio, right? Almost everything. Having said that, if you know one public radio market, you know one public radio market, right? And so I think market by market, the answer to that is going to be very, very different. I mean, KUT is a terrific, terrific station. Fact is, it's rather deeply enmeshed with the University of Texas at Austin, which makes it difficult for folks like us to fund because we don't, the decision-making mechanism, right? I mean, it's just, it's hard. So I think in some places, I'm going to be in New Jersey next week, talking about the merger between a digitally native property and a public media property. We hope we can help in a number of those, but I think it really is kind of market by market and case by case. We're learning as we go. Our friends at WNYC are helping us think about this. We're super open-minded and kind of in learning mode more than telling mode.
Before we go to the next question, I just wanted to make an important point that another major reason why Knight Foundation was so found the American Journalism Project so compelling, and that's the commitment to diversity and serving all communities. When we talk about a decline in trust among Republicans, when we talk about a decline in trust among millennials, the decline in trust among people of color in communities across this country is not new, okay? It is not new, and so one of the great opportunities that the American Journalism Project offers is to help support those new models, those like new approaches, and perhaps legacy news organizations to really help serve communities where voices have not been heard and have not been reflected. So that's just yet another really great reason why the American Journalism Project just gives us so much hope for the future.
In the back of the house.
Hi, I'm Laura Walker, president of New York Public Radio for another month or so. And I won't pile on about public radio, although I obviously believe that there's a huge amount of opportunity to work not just side by side, but together. And I have huge admiration and want to thank all of you for your incredible commitment and Evan for what you've done in Texas. My question really goes back to what we heard this morning from Dana, which is our kids are on YouTube. They're getting their news not with due respect from the Texas Tribune or the Austin newspaper or other places. How can we make sure as we go forward, and that's one of the things I've been very committed to in leading public radio to the extent that we can within where we are, to look at podcasts, to look at social media, to look at Gothamist, to look at ways to use data and all sorts of things. I think it is essential that we don't look back, that we look forward. And so I just wanted to hear from each of you.
I believe, Laura, that you're exactly right. I've got a 22-year-old and an 18-year-old, and they will never read a daily newspaper in print, and they may never read the Texas Tribune, but you know what? They consume content on social media. My daughter, who is 22, interacts with the Tribune on Facebook and occasionally on Instagram. My son is absolutely about Instagram and Snapchat and the way that we have developed specific strategies and tactics for those platforms. It is not platform agnostic, it's platform devout at our newsroom. We have a different strategy for every, right? I think that you have to assume that you have a bunch of different constituencies and that they're going to consume your content differently, and you have to have a strategy for all of those. And woe to anybody who doesn't understand that the mulch is overturning as far as the way that you reach people.
30 seconds on that, John.
What he said. But the trick is, again, the guy with the hammer, everything looks like a nail. You've got to give these organizations the flexibility to figure out how to monetize all those things, right? I mean, you guys are, you're figuring it out, how to monetize podcasts in the context of a public radio system and NPR, right? Complex stuff, and so you don't hire the guy down the street. You hire Andrew Golis to go help you figure that out. He ain't cheap. I'll tell you that for sure. And so we need people like that in this ecosystem. None of those questions are going to get answered by just the folks hanging around the water cooler today, I don't think.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Just want to say that one of the things that we're most excited about is at Knight Foundation, we're helping leaders respond to the rapid changes taking place. And we're really excited about that. We're really excited about all the people here who can make that happen. So thank you.
I
so
will
much.
say that that I got this $7 haircut yesterday in Fort Pierce at a roadside barber shop where I listened to the barber tell me about a media conspiracy that all of the networks are controlled by the government. So we have a lot of work to do, John. And it is Jennifer's week. And we thank you. It is John's big day. Congratulations to you. I know Evan joins me in that. And thank all of you for listening to us. Oh.